I'm Dave McClough. I work for Dr. Greg Popchak with the Pastoral Solutions Institute, and I'm joined here with my colleague and friend, Andy Proctor, and we're going to walk through the mindsets today, and um, so we'll go from there. So then when we talk to our clients up front, we get their problems, we get a whole list of them, and then what we say is the theme that runs through all of them is this sense of powerlessness. And what we mean by that is that we have you feel stuck and you don't know what to do. So, and we would say most people blame that on the situation, but we would say, oh, actually, that's from a mindset. And we have two mindsets we talk about, the adult self mindset and the child self mindset. So when we talk about the adult self mindset, we are saying that you can have your feelings fully, but your intellect is still driving the car of your life. Now, you may not like the situation. You know, you might be saying, I'd rather be anywhere else, doing anything else with anyone else. But even if I can't see the ultimate solution right now, I will keep putting one foot in front of the other and I will create an effective response to this situation. So let's get to work. So that's the adult self in a little nutshell. The child self is when we go to this place where we're focused on the problem and the feelings of powerlessness. We can barely see solutions. No, we can't see solutions and we can barely see resources. So you're at least saying in your head, if the other person or the environment would just change, I could be okay. So that's the only solution there is. Someone else needs to change before I can be okay, or the environment. Now, that's powerlessness because what if they don't change? And your to-do list gets rather small, except for waiting if you go there. So that's the sense of powerlessness. Then on the resources side, you can barely see the resources, and it would be kind of like me saying, well, hey, why don't you try this? And you say, well, thanks a lot, Dave, you're a big help. That means nothing to me. Thanks. So that's the adult self and the child self in a nutshell. But let's talk about some brain physiology that comes out of this. So we have the hand model of the brain. You put your thumb across your palm and you bring your fingers down, and then you can see the bottom part of your wrist and bottom part of your palm and your wrist. That's the brain stem. And when we're in the brain stem, there's two things we're going to talk about. It does a lot of things, but we're going to talk about two. One is neuroception. That's a big word, but it's the guy who invented it said he wanted something that's not a conscious process. So perception would be more conscious. So when we're in neuroception, it's our unconscious risk assessor. And it's always assessing.
That's gonna work.
Yeah, when you go here, you're flipping your lid. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So, but when we're here in neuroception,
Okay.
is it safe? Is it dangerous? Or is it life threat? And when it's safe, we can play. They say the social engagement system opens up and you can play. People are safe, you can engage, you're happy, you're not on alert, you're not hyper vigilant. So
The
that's
neuroception
safety.
though is different than child mindset.
Yes, this is the mechanism that activates the child mindset.
Right.
So then when we go to it's something's dangerous, that's when in the alert system, Houston, we got a problem. Um, it's dangerous. Then we go to fight or flight. And
Mhm.
that we'll find out is the child selves coming out there. So but that goes to fight or flight. Then if it's life threat, um, that's when we go to freeze mode. And adrenaline is for fight and flight. Get me out of here. Get your muscles pumped up, jacked up to get out of there or fight. And then the freeze mode is the cortisol, and that's when the cortisol dump comes in and it shuts down your brain. And that's when kids are crying it out to sleep, that's what happens. Their cortisol takes over
Mm.
and floods their brain and shuts them down. So that's the three stages. Um, so the two things in the brainstem are neuroception and then fight, flight, and freeze. So then we go to the middle part of the brain, and that is where your limbic system is. Thank you, Vanna.
Yeah.
Vanna White. so so the limbic system does lots of things. We're just going to talk about two things here. One, it's the bonding centers. So that's how we feel. The attachment centers, that's how we feel close. Um, and then the other emotions are here. Now, some people would call the brain stem the reptilian part of our brain. So we might affectionately call it the lizard brain. And then the limbic system is the mammalian part of the brain. So if you have like a pet dog, they're all happy to see you when you come home. And if you had a pet crocodile, totally care less, unless you look like lunch or something, right? So so that's the limbic system. And then we're the outer part of the brain is the fingers and the fingertips. That's the prefrontal cortex. That's what has all the executive functioning in it. And we're just going to talk about three things here. So the first thing in the prefrontal cortex is your intellect. And simply, we would say that it's your ability to see solutions. The second thing is your ability to have to see the consequences of your behavior. So what do we call that in the Catholic Church?
Conscience.
Conscience. So the conscience helps you, okay, if I say this or I do this, mom's not going to be happy, dad, friend, whoever's not going to be happy. That's the conscience. And then the third thing is empathy. And empathy is that ability to take someone else's perspective. And empathy needs to be going two ways. So if empathy goes from one person to the other only, we call that codependence. And if empathy only goes toward yourself, then we would call that at least selfishness or egocentricity, or at worst, narcissism. So the empathy is only for self. Um, so then it's also here we would talk about here I would bring in some the word perichoresis. This is a Greek word that explains the interrelationship inside the Trinity, and it's usually translated mutual indwelling. And but we could translate it more literally. Peri is around. Choresis means to make a place, and it could also be translated to dance. So one interesting image is to have the Trinity be dancing around each other. And that's the way they relate. But we'll use to make a place for. So when somebody makes a place for the other, they're not trying to make them change and be who they want them to be. And I think it's an element of empathy is to make a place for the other person as they are, not as we wish they would be. So um, when so in a dysfunctional home, there's unity in conformity. I need, unity, oneness only happens when you're the way I want you to be. This is also called conditional love. So, I will only love you if you do X. And So then let's see, so to make a place all around empathy. So then healthy families and inside the Trinity is unity in diversity. And so they're three, but they're one. But they're three, but they're one, but they're three, but they're one. So you never lose your individualness, but you're always in community, in communion of persons. So that's empathy. So now when so there's the intellect, the conscience, and empathy. So that I'm calling ICE now. Intellect, conscience, empathy. And when our fingers are down, that's when our brain is integrated. And that, or they call it linked. So different parts of the brain, they're all linked. When we're in our adult self, this is when we are integrated. We can have our intellect. ICE is
When
online.
when does neuroception happen? Is it
Neuroception happens all the time, 24/7.
okay.
And it just says, oh, it's safe for me or it's not safe for me.
Oh, okay.
And
So it's neutral. Neuroception is neutral.
well, it's just a mechanism, an alarm system. And when it's off, you're safe. When it's on, you go into fight, flight, or freeze. So it's kind of the smoke detector, if you want.
Okay.
Um, so then when your fingers are down, that's when the brain's integrated. And then that's when we're in our adult self. We could also call that the physiology of virtue. Because if you don't have your intellect, conscience, and empathy online, you're seeing other people as the enemy. And then you go to war with them. And, you know, it's not safe. So so when the fingers are down, that's integrated. And then if you get flooded, if neuroception gets activated, so you see a threat, it's dangerous, then your brain starts to go offline. Now it could go one or two fingers, or if it's really bad, you go all four fingers go up. And that's what we call flipping your lid. That's losing your mind. That's going crazy. And that's when you treat other people as the enemy and you're not loving. And you're going, if there's no real, you know, physical threat, then you're treating other people like an object and you're not being loving. You're not working for their good. You're working for yours, but it's a disordered way of working for your good. It's not helpful. And so the whole goal in counseling then is to bring down your fingers and stay in your adult self as long as possible. Okay. Now, that's the ideal. And I'm a realist. So there are things that make your brain go offline. And everybody has seen somebody who's been too drunk or too high. And they say and do stupid things. Yes, I had 24 beers and no, I can drive a car, like, right. You're out of your mind. But that makes their intellect, their conscience, and their empathy go offline.
Hmm.
Alcohol. So that's when you can say and do stupid things. So all right.
So well, this might be forward thinking since I already know what the three personas, but maybe I'll ask it later. But I wanted to ask about if you know two fingers are up or one finger's up, or like which distinction that would be with the different personas.
Yes. Well, so it would be a matter of degree, and then it would also be a matter of temperature.
Okay.
So the temperature, when your temperature gets to a 7.9, you've got, one or two fingers out. And then when you get to an 8, it's full blown. Your brain's your brain's on fire. Ice is offline. You need ice to calm it back down.
Yeah.
So so then there are things, natural things. So we got chemical, blow blow up your mind, have your hair on fire kind of thing. Um, so then there's more natural things, and this isn't an acronym. So you've got halts, and I stole it from the 12 step crowd, and then I've added things. So the first one is H. So if you get too hungry, you can flip your lid easier. If you get too angry, you can flip your lid easier. If you get too lonely, you flip your lid easier. If you get too tired, you can flip your lid easier. And then I start with the S's. If you get too sick, too stressed, or too scared, you can flip your lid easier. Now, I also borrow the H. So for some women and actually some men, when the hormones go out of whack, you can flip your lid easier. So I had one wife who had her husband had testicular cancer. His testosterone spiked, and he was a real bear to live with. So he was flipping his lid all over the place. So when the hormones go out of whack, you can flip your lid easier. All right, so that's the adult self, child self in a nutshell, and then we'll go into the three personas or three. I just call them child selves, um, and walk through this. So, um, and these are coming out of the flipping your lid, and the more um, the more offline, the more you go into these. All of these child selves can be done on a continuum. So the first one I talk about is the pouting withdrawing. And this is a flight strategy. Get me out of here. And this can be done two ways. First is mentally. So you might be listening in a conversation only halfways, and you're doing your to-do list or your grocery list for that day. So you're not really paying attention. You're withdrawing from the conversation. Then the other way is to do it physically, and that's to get involved in work too much. That could be hobbies, that could be sports, that could be church activities. It could be good things, but you're spending more and more time away from the family or the marriage. So that's the two ways. Now I've got several metaphors that I use here. Turtling is one. So if you've ever seen a turtle, you go around smacking on its back, what does it do? Goes into its shell. It's not coming out till it's safe.
Mhm.
And then, I have a lot of clients whose, strategy is to keep hitting the shell on the back, say, hey, you coming out yet? What are you doing in there? Come on out. It's safe. Bang, bang, bang. And it's like, I think you're working against yourself. So that's the turtle. Another one is poker face. So that's when, you know, you can't read anything on the face. There's no tells. And they're just stone. Well, that's the third one is stonewalling. And that's the first horseman from John Gottman's work on the four horsemen of the apocalypse of marriage. And he's, done some amazing research. He can tell with 94% accuracy by listening to 20 minutes of a conversation that's a couple in conflict and say that marriage is not going to last. It's over if you have any of these four horsemen. It's not if, it's when, unless you do something about it. So stonewalling. Now I way oversimplify this and I just say stonewalling is building a wall around your heart and nobody gets in and nobody gets out. So it's just contraction. Um, so that's all under pouting withdrawing. The second one is tantruming. And the tantrumer looks like they're the most powerful of the three because let's face it, when bullying works at times, right? Intimidation works. So they look like they're the most powerful, but they're actually the most powerless. They're already feeling out of control of the situation. What are they also out of control of by definition?
their own behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. Their behavior and their emotions themselves, the whole deal. They're gone. So, so that's tantruming. Now, um, so uh, tantruming, well, I was going to say tantruming can be done on a continuum. The pouting withdrawing can be done on a continuum too. It's just, are you withdrawing from a conversation mentally or physically, or are you, withdrawing for 3 to 30 days, saying, I've had it. I'm not coming back. So at the extreme end is the longer term. At the short end is, shorter term. Now, when we get to tantruming in the continuum there, that range, um, the extreme end, I call it the classic tantrum. You've got kids, you've seen this. Kids throw themselves on the floor, kicking and screaming, right? And us adults, oh, we get much more sophisticated than that. We throw things to the floor and scream. So, so that's on the extreme end. And then on the light end is the second horseman, and that's defensiveness. And I don't care what your training is, everybody has an inner lawyer. And when they get defensive, they pull out their PowerPoint presentation, get 5 bullet points on why you're wrong or why they're right. So that's tantruming light, defensiveness. And this pouting, or this tantruming is a fight strategy. So either I'm going to fight verbally or physically or both or whatever, but it's a fight strategy. So then is the third one is the expert mode. And this is a freeze mode. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to come out with life threat. Because it won't, so this one doesn't quite jive as nicely as the other ones, but I still think it's helpful. The expert mode has a double dose of powerlessness. So they're saying, well, they had the expert has a great solution for the other person. The only problem is they're not interested. So, and this has nothing to do with the quality of the suggestion. It could be top drawer, number one woodwork if they were open suggestion. That's not the point. It has nothing to do with the quality of the suggestion. It has everything to do with the receptivity of the other person. Um, so it's powerless because I could be okay if you would just take my advice, and if you would just take my sage advice, I could be okay. So you're powerless because you don't have anything else to do there. You get stuck because all you've got is offering the solution. So, and this one you can, a lot of people that are left brain and there are engineer types, and they say, well, my temperature's not up, I was not offline, um, when I was giving a suggestion. And I would say, well, you are saying in your head, I could be okay if she would just take my suggestion. You're also the intellect. Well, you only have one solution, and that's if she would just change, if she would accept my advice. Your conscience is offline because you're not seeing what the consequences of your behavior are in this moment, and your empathy is offline because you're not acting in a way that's helpful to your spouse in the moment. Now,
Yeah.
your intention is fine. So there's always these two stories, your intention and your behavior. And your intention may be, I'm trying to help. It's a good one. It's just that solution doesn't work at this point. It may work later when the person's brain is back online. They may be open to it and they may not. But um, if you had empathy, you'd be saying, wow, what I'm not doing isn't working. So let me try something else. And generally, to give the commercial for later thing, is you need to listen and validate feelings. You need to empathize more. And that's then your solution, not your 3 point plan or 12 point
Yeah.
plan.
So is
So
it as much about receptivity as it is about the way the presentation is being made?
yes,
Like,
yes. So it's actually more about receptivity. Um, if one of your kids is melting down and their front part of their brain's offline, it's not time to try to teach them or get them a solution. The only goal then is to bring their temperature back down to
mm,
calm their brain down. So it's a different way of defining the problem, and that's one of my little things. How you define the problem always defines your interventions. Well, this kid's being disobedient. Well, that's one way to define it. If they're disobedient, then you go to a power move. But if they're dysregulated and they're not attached well enough because they're not feeling connected, they don't want to please you in the moment, then they're not attached enough. And so then the problem is, well, let's bring their temperature down, bring their brain back online, calm them down, regulate them emotionally. So, so if your solution dysregulates somebody, then you know it's not helpful. So your behavior is not matched with your intention. You're trying to help, but you're actually coming to the fire with gasoline. And if you get stuck in, well, this is a good solution and it should work for you, then your temperature is getting higher and your brain's going offline. The ice is going offline. And so you need ice to calm that brain down. All right. So back to expert mode. There's a twofer here on the horseman. If you say do it this way, then um, what have you said about that person's the way they're doing it? Is it right or wrong? Yeah. So it's wrong. So it comes in as criticism. So there's the third
okay.
horseman. So you could go, and that's implicit. So you could go explicit and say, well, in the middle of the continuum is, well, you are doing it wrong. Here's how you need to do it. And then when you get to the end to contempt, then you might say something like, well, I can't even believe you would think this way. How stupid could you be? Do it this way.
Okay.
And then if I put any more energy into it at all, what other child self am I in?
Tantrum.
Tantruming. Totally, right? So these categories aren't always pure. You can
Mm,
combine them. All right. So that's the adult self, child self stuff. The goal is to stay in your adult self as long as possible. And that's what we help people do. And one of our mantras for um, parenting is you have to train the child's brain how you want it to be. And we do this with the adults because if you're constantly dysregulated, then we need to help you regulate your emotions, put your air mask on first so you can take care of others, instead of having to use the gas mask and your kids are poison. We want you to put the air mask on and then calm the brain down, and then you can help your kids train their brain how you want it to be. Now, if you do functional MRIs on a 4-year-old and an adult who's flipped their lid, they look the same. This part of the brain, dark. This part of the brain, lit up. And so if you've ever seen a couple of 4-year-olds, I think this might hit close to home, go at it with each other. It ain't pretty.
yeah.
And if you
Right.
see that in adults, it ain't pretty.
Mhm.
So we've got the flipping the lid, and then we're wanting to teach people how to calm down. And so their intellect, their conscience, and their empathy are all online. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if this
Trying to,
rings. Go ahead.
oh, I was just trying to think of different clients where this could be relevant. Or I mean, it's definitely relevant. But um, I have
Yeah.
a client where I've been working with him for a couple months, and he's just asked to start, couples, or with his wife as well, and uh, definitely can see the lecturing kind of expert, like at mode, or like with him, because he was telling me, I think it was last week, that they get into these conflicts, and they go like 5 minutes before she's like, we just need to talk to a professional. I'm not talking about this at all until we
Mhm.
talk to a professional.
So she shuts down.
Yeah, completely.
So, so that's the
He's got a
pouting
lot of
withdrawing.
he's got a lot of solutions, but the empathy is gone and the conscience is gone. It's hard for him to
Yeah.
see. It's really built in from his family system. You can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is on a personal note. In college, there was these Shell oil commercials, and they were the Shell Answer Man. And one of my profs, we were seeing him. He was a therapist, but he was also a theologian. And he said, "Dave, we need to get you the Shell Answer Man, coat." so 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 having the knowledge I have is a huge what liability when it comes to relationships. Um so yes, we can come in with solutions, and my wife's not always ready for them. So
Right.
all right, any other final thoughts?
um, that's really helpful to kind of broaden understanding of all those in different ways. And I didn't really know much about the auto. You say like the bottom is like the autonomic part of the brain, or like,
Right,
yeah. So that was helpful to
that has
have that
neuroception.
insight. So yeah, and just like a little bit more about like the limbic system. There's like, that's the I didn't put the connection together that there's also the attachment part of the brain.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's helpful. I think I'll have to watch this video again a few more times to
Yeah.
get all the details parsed out. But
Yeah. No, and so the neuroception. So, and everybody that, even on Catholic Home, I'm talking about the fortress and internal boundaries.
yeah,
And so when neuroception goes off, when the alarm goes off, it's not safe. Then you have to build some safety in. And that's what the fortress is about and for. And I need to redo that video too. Um, but anyway, that fortress internally, you can kick people out of there. You can calm your physiology down just by imagining proximity, more proximity between you and the person. Um, so there was a gal in Catholic Home that had she said, I've been doing the transfer and communion prayer, which is another video we have, and that's up. Um, but then she said it's not working, and her mom's face, her angry face, was too close. I said, oh well, then you need to do the fortress, and you
mm,
need to kick her out and push it out away from you, and then that can, the fortress was helping her feel like, she's triggered, and or not the mom's angry face is helping her feel like she's triggered, and then the fortress, I don't know, I haven't heard back if it worked for her or not, but um that helps you regulate your emotions, and then you feel like you're in charge of your internal world. So that's why it makes such a big deal out of the fortress. And it's a comment you know every third time we talk, on Fridays, that's like, oh, that's the fortress, because you have to calm the brain down so you
Mm.
can have the physiology of virtue. And then when you can go from there, then you're loving yourself. Oh, this, I didn't get this in here on empathy. So
Mm.
um empathy is for the other person, but it's also for you at the same time.
Mm.
And that's like, love your neighbor as yourself. So you have to work for both parties good at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's why I make such a big deal about the fortress, because once neuroception is triggered, it's not safe. And then we're trying to create some safety by giving a sense of control over in the internal world. And that's, that you can get flooded by memories, traumatic memories. It can be, well, you could be rehearsing, a bad situation. It doesn't have to be trauma, but it's triggering the neuroception saying, hey, we got a problem here, Houston, and you go to fight or flight. Um, so so making that felt, not just, it's not just an intellectual thing. We want them to experience. That's why, get them to experience, where do you feel it in your body? Well, how far up the scale is it? An experience scale. Oh, that's a 7. All
Mm.
right, we do this, it goes down. And then I know the body's starting to re-regulate itself, and the adult self is coming back online. So in some ways, that's a really tight system.
Mm.
You have, you know when this is happening, and you've got physical cues when it's calmed down.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
all
Absolutely.
right, well, I think we'll park it there, and we'll stop the recording. I hope that's helpful for people.
Yeah, it's helpful to consider.